The first time Xander Nolan saw the shattered window of the townhouse on Maple and Ninth, he was standing ankle-deep in slush, holding his 7-year-old daughter's hand, and trying to explain why Santa might not be able to bring the bike she wanted this year. "Daddy," Evie tugged his sleeve, her mittens soaked. "Look, it's broken." He turned his head. The townhouse stood tall and elegant, its dark brick glowing under the street lamp. One of the ground floor windows had a jagged hole, glass scattered across the sidewalk like fallen stars. Wind howled through it, carrying bits of snow inside. Xander glanced at the time. Past 9. He was exhausted, his hands numb from fixing a pipe in a tenant's basement all afternoon, but he couldn't just walk past that. "You stay here, Munchkin," he said, crouching beside Evie to zip her coat up higher. "I'll be right back." "Is someone hurt?" she asked, her wide brown eyes full of concern. "Let's find out." He approached the door and knocked. No answer. The house looked empty, dark except for a low light in the hallway. He knocked again, harder. A shadow moved behind the frosted glass, then the door slowly creaked open. She was barefoot. Legs bare, a silk robe tied hastily around her waist, sleeves too long for her arms. Her dark hair was in a messy bun, and her eyes, startlingly blue, were wide and wary. "Yes," she asked, her voice cautious. "Your window's broken," Xander said simply, gesturing behind her. She blinked. "I know, it just happened. I think a branch or something." "Do you have anyone to fix it?" She hesitated. "No," she admitted. "Not tonight. It's fine, I'll take care of it in the morning." "I have my tools in the truck." He pointed behind him. "It's freezing out, that window's letting in all the cold. I can patch it for you." Her eyes narrowed slightly, trying to read him. "I'm not charging you," he added quickly. "Just, it's not safe like that." She looked past him, saw Evie standing patiently on the sidewalk, bundled and watching. "You have a daughter," she said. He followed her gaze. "Yeah, that's Evie." Something softened in her expression. She stepped aside. "All right, come in." Xander stepped inside, the warmth hitting his face like a wave. The foyer was massive, marble floors, a chandelier glittered above. He tried not to stare. "I'm Xander," he said. She gave a small smile. "Lena." "Nice to meet you, Lena." She led him to the broken window. The room was a library, high ceilings, wooden shelves lined with books, a fireplace crackling low in the corner. The shattered glass looked even worse from inside, snow dusting the plush rug below it. He set to work while Lena disappeared briefly and returned with a small blanket for Evie, who had followed him in and curled up on the couch, watching quietly. "I'm sorry," Lena said softly, kneeling beside the girl. "This must be past your bedtime." Evie gave a sleepy grin. "It's okay, Daddy fixes everything." Lena looked at Xander, with something unreadable in her gaze. By the time he taped up the window with plastic and sealed the edges, it was close to 10. "All done," he said, brushing off his hands. "It's not perfect, but it'll keep the cold out until you get it replaced." She stood with her arms crossed, watching him. "You didn't have to do that." "I know. People don't usually offer to help me." He shrugged. "People should." She smiled, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Let me at least make you something hot. Tea, coffee, have cocoa." Evie perked up. "Hot cocoa." Xander hesitated. He had more work in the morning, and he hated accepting things when he couldn't repay them. But Evie looked up at him, hopeful. "Sure," he said, "cocoa would be great." They sat around the kitchen island, mugs steaming in front of them. Lena's kitchen was gorgeous granite counters, double ovens, a giant fridge that probably cost more than his truck. He tried not to let it show on his face. "You live here alone," he asked, trying not to sound too curious. For now, she said. Travel a lot, just got back yesterday. He nodded. Your family okay with you living alone in a place with broken windows? She grinned. My family doesn't really tell me what to do. Evie yawned and leaned against her dad. We should go, Xander said, standing. Let me walk you out, Lena said, grabbing her coat. Outside, the snow was falling again, soft and quiet. Thanks again, Xander, she said as he buckled Evie into the passenger seat of his old pickup. No problem, just keep the doors locked tonight. She nodded, her arms wrapped around herself. He paused, then added, if you need anything repairs or whatever you can call me. I work for a property group, but I do some side gigs too. Lena tilted her head. You're a contractor. Something like that, handyman/plumber/everything. She smiled. That's a lot of slashes. He laughed. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a card, scribbling on the back before handing it to him. That's my number. He took it, glanced at the front, just her name, no job title, no company. Thanks. As he drove off, Evie half asleep beside him, he glanced in the rearview mirror. Lena was still standing in the snow, watching him go. Lena Zaragoza didn't sleep that night. She sat in her library, staring at the window he'd fixed, fingers wrapped around a second mug of cocoa. She hadn't told him the truth, not even close. She wasn't just someone who lived in an old townhouse. She owned it, and the 6 buildings next to it, and half of the block. Her name wasn't just on that card, it was on every business deal her late father had built from nothing into an empire. Zaragoza Tech. Net worth, $12 billion. She could have called a team to fix the window. She could have flown in glass from Italy if she wanted. But instead, she let a tired man with gentle eyes, and a daughter who called him her hero, seal it up with plastic and tape. And something about that felt real. Raw. Safe. She didn't know who Xander Nolan really was. But she wanted to. Xander didn't expect to see her again. He figured it had been a moment, a brief, strange brush with someone who lived in a world so far removed from his that it almost didn't feel real. But 3 days later, while he was installing a new furnace in the basement of a duplex across town, his phone rang. He wiped his hands on his jeans before answering. Yeah. Xander. The voice was unmistakable, even through the static. Soft but alert, Lena. He stepped away from the noise of the tools. Is everything okay? I was hoping you'd have time for another repair. The upstairs bathroom's leaking. I tried calling someone else, but they can't come until next week. He glanced at the thermostat he was wiring, then at the time. It could swing by in an hour. She hesitated, then said, I'll be here. He didn't tell her he'd already been planning to pick Evie up from school and head home for the night. But when he arrived at the townhouse, Evie next to him in the passenger seat with a book on her lap and her hair still damp from gym class, Lena was already waiting on the steps. She wore jeans this time, tucked into boots, and a long coat belted at the waist. Her hair was down, half blown by the wind as she tucked it behind her ear. I didn't expect you to bring your daughter again, she said as they approached. I don't really have a choice, Xander said, hoisting his toolbox. Her mom's not in the picture, and I don't leave her with strangers. Lena's eyes flicked to Evie, who offered a small wave. Hi again. Hey, sweetheart, Lena said, opening the door. You want to come in while your dad works? I've got a big puzzle on the dining table, 900 pieces. Evie lit up. Really? Come see. By the time Xander was upstairs with his head under the sink, he could hear pieces clinking together downstairs. Laughter. Soft chatter. He hadn't expected Lena to be so good with kids, but there was something about the way she engaged Evie that didn't feel like she was trying, it felt like she wanted to. The leak was worse than he thought. He had to replace the entire trap and reseal the underside of the basin. That meant a trip back to his truck, more tools, and at least another 40 minutes of work. When he came downstairs to grab a wrench, Lena was pouring Evie a glass of apple juice. "She's smart," Lena said quietly, her voice just above a whisper. "Way ahead for her age." Xander nodded. "She reads like it's breathing. I can't keep up with her sometimes." Lena glanced toward the living room, then looked back at him. "Do you ever get time for yourself?" He gave her a dry look. "I get time in traffic." She laughed, low and warm. "That doesn't count." He shrugged. "It's enough." "Do you ever go out with friends?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "Most of my friends are guys I work with. We don't really do dinners. It's more like shouting over power tools." Lena stepped closer without meaning to. "What about dates?" He paused. "You always ask this many questions." "Only when I'm curious." He studied her. "Why are you curious?" She tilted her head. "Because you're interesting." He didn't know what to do with that, not when it came from someone like her, someone who moved through rooms like she belonged in every one of them. "What about you?" he asked. "Do you go out?" She shook her head, suddenly distant. "Not really." "Why not?" "People tend to want things from me." "What makes you think I don't?" She looked at him steady. "Because you haven't." He didn't answer, just looked at her for a moment longer before turning back toward the stairs. "I'll be done in 20. When he finished, Evie was already nodding off on the couch, curled beneath a throw blanket Lena must have offered her. He lifted her gently, careful not to wake her, and turned toward the door. "You didn't charge me," Lena said softly behind him. "Nope." She stepped closer. "Will you let me take you both to dinner then?" He blinked. "Are you serious?" "Very." "Like, now?" "Tomorrow, or whenever you're free." He studied her, uncertain. "You don't have to do that." "I know," she said, "but I want to." He glanced down at Evie, then back at her. "Okay, dinner." "Pick a day." "Saturday." "Done." He didn't know what he'd just agreed to, but somehow, it felt like something was shifting, like a door had opened, and he'd stepped through without realizing it. Saturday came, and he dressed in the best shirt he owned, clean, ironed, sleeves rolled at the cuffs. Evie wore a dress she'd once worn to a classmate's birthday party. Her excitement was contagious, even if he tried not to let it show. Lena didn't just pick a restaurant, she sent a black car. The driver knew both their names. Evie stared with wide eyes as they climbed in. "Daddy, this car has lights on the inside." He muttered something about it being probably rented. But when they pulled up to a stone building with a valet and a doorman, he realized fast this wasn't some random pick. The hostess led them to a private booth near the back, candlelight flickering, a soft pianist playing live near the bar. Xander had never been somewhere this quiet while people ate. Every sound felt magnified, every detail too polished. Lena was already seated, her hair swept back and makeup subtle but flawless. Evie slid in beside her without hesitation, as if she belonged there. "You clean up good," Lena said, her eyes meeting his. "You dress down well," he returned. She smiled, touché. Dinner was unreal. Evie had fresh pasta with truffle cream sauce. Xander ordered steak, even though he winced at the price when he saw the menu. Lena didn't blink when she ordered the halibut and a glass of wine that probably cost more than his entire grocery run that week. But it wasn't the food that got to him. It was the way Lena paid attention to Evie's stories. The way she asked about school projects and remembered the name of her reading teacher. The way she looked at Xander when he talked like what he said mattered. After dessert, Lena reached into her coat and pulled out a folded envelope. "What's that?" Xander asked. "A favor." He didn't take it. "What kind of favor?" "I know someone who runs a grant program for small businesses. Tradesmen, single parents, people like you." "I'm not a charity case." She winced. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it?" "I meant you deserve more than patching things together day by day." His jaw tightened. "I don't take handouts." "I wouldn't offer one." He stared at her, then looked away, trying to calm the heat in his chest. Evie interrupted them both. "Can I go see the piano?" Lena nodded, and Evie slipped off the booth and wandered toward the musician, who gave her a warm smile as she approached. Lena turned back to Xander. "I didn't mean to offend you." He exhaled slowly. "I know, but you don't understand what it's like to constantly feel like you're one step away from losing everything." She said nothing for a long moment, then, "Actually, I do." He looked at her, skeptical. "My father built what we had from scratch. Then he died, and I was left with a board of directors trying to sell off everything he started. Had to claw my way into every room they didn't want me in." Xander blinked. "You run a company." She nodded. "I inherited Zaragoza Tech." He stared at her, as in, the Zaragoza. Her lips twitched. "Yes." He leaned back, stunned. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you don't treat me like someone with a net worth. You treat me like a person." He didn't know what to say, not at first. Then he asked quietly, "So why me?" She looked at him, unflinching. "Because you're the only man I've met in years who didn't ask me for anything." The driver took them home in silence. Evie slept against his arm, and Xander tried to make sense of the night. Of the woman who had just changed everything he thought he knew. Xander didn't hear from Lena for 3 days not, until a courier showed up at the job site with a nondescript envelope and a handwritten note tucked inside. He opened it with calloused fingers, sweat still clinging to his brow from the busted water heater he was replacing. Inside was an invitation. No explanation, just a time, date, and an address on Park Avenue. The handwriting was neat and deliberate, the paper thick, expensive. He stared at it for a long time before tucking it into his back pocket and getting back to work. Saturday came faster than expected. He arranged for his neighbor, an older woman who adored Evie and owed him a favor for fixing her garage door last month, to watch her for the evening. Then he drove to the address in his cleanest jacket, the same one he wore to his cousin's wedding, wondering the entire drive if he was making a mistake. The doorman didn't blink when he gave his name, just opened the door with a practiced nod and motioned him inside. Xander stepped into a world so pristine it felt like walking into a museum. Polished floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline, and a grand piano nestled in one corner. The air smelled faintly of citrus and something expensive he couldn't place. Lena stood near the window, her silhouette framed in gold light. She wore wide-leg trousers and a sleeveless top tucked in cleanly, no jewelry except a slim watch. Her hair was up again, but neater this time, secured with a single silver pin. "You came," she said, turning to face him. "I wasn't sure I should." "But you did." He shrugged and stepped further inside. Curiosity's a powerful thing. She poured him a drink sparkling water, no pretense, and handed it over without comment. "Why am I here, Lena?" She leaned against the countertop. "Because I want you to see who I am, not the version I present when I'm trying to be ordinary." "And what version is this?" "The one I usually hide." Xander took a slow sip, eyeing the penthouse. You live like this every day. I do. It's a lot. She didn't argue. I know. Why me? He asked again, this time quieter. She walked to the piano and ran her hand over the keys without pressing them. Because you make me feel normal, and I haven't felt that in a long time. He leaned against the edge of the island. And you think bringing me here is going to help that? I brought you here because I didn't want to lie by omission anymore. He set his glass down. I can't compete with this. I didn't ask you to. But that's what it feels like. She crossed the room, stopping a few feet from him. I don't care about competing. I care that you look at me like I'm not made of gold. He shook his head. You are. No, she said, her voice steady. What you do every day, raising your daughter alone, working until your hands bleed, that's gold. He looked away, jaw tight. Don't romanticize it. I'm not, I'm telling you I see it. Silence stretched between them. Then she said, there's a gala next weekend. I'm expected to show up with someone. He laughed once, dry. And you want to bring the guy who fixes pipes. I want to bring the man who doesn't care if own 5 companies. What would I even wear? I'll take care of that. He frowned. You're not buying me a suit. I wasn't going to. I was going to lend you one. He arched a brow. From where? My father's closet. I haven't touched it since he passed. Xander's face shifted. That's personal. Lena nodded. Exactly. He studied her for a long moment, then said, You sure this isn't a mistake? No, she replied, but I do know I'd regret not asking. He sighed, then nodded once. Fine, but if I step into that place and someone asks me about hedge funds, I'm walking right back out. I think you'll surprise yourself. He glanced around again. This place doesn't feel like you. She tilted her head. What does? He looked at her, really looked. The way you are with Evie, the way you remember things people say, quiet but never passive. You don't belong in a glass tower, Lena. She gave a small smile. Neither do you. He left that night with more questions than answers, but he couldn't deny the pull. She was everything he wasn't: powerful, composed, wealthy beyond imagination. And yet, when they were together, none of that seemed to matter. The following week moved in a blur. Lena sent a driver to pick him up for a fitting, a discreet tailor who didn't ask questions and measured him with military precision. The suit was dark, tailored, and sharper than anything he'd ever worn in his life. He caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. Evie watched from the couch, legs swinging. You look like someone in a movie, she said. He turned, adjusting the cuffs. Good or bad kind? She giggled, the kind who marries the princess. He chuckled under his breath and kissed her forehead. I'll be back before midnight. The gala was held in an art museum, the kind that only opened for private events and had sculptures flown in from overseas. The entrance was lined with photographers, but Lena had arranged for them to go in through a side door. He stepped into the space and instantly felt like a fish in the wrong ocean. Men in tuxedos, women in gowns that shimmered under the lights, champagne flutes balanced delicately on manicured fingers. Lena appeared at his side, her dress black and structured, with a neckline that drew attention without trying. Her hair was swept low, and a single diamond shimmered at her throat. You okay? She asked, slipping her hand into his. No, he muttered, but I'm here. She squeezed his hand gently. That's enough. They moved together through the crowd, stopping occasionally when someone greeted Lena with a nod or handshake. She introduced Xander simply as a friend, and no one pressed further, though a few eyes lingered too long. At one point, a tall man in a gray suit approached. He had the kind of face that belonged in boardrooms, sharp, polished, and calculating. Lena, he said smoothly, it's been too long. Matthew, she replied, her tone cool. And this is. She didn't flinch. Xander Nolan. The man offered a hand Xander didn't take. Matthew ignored it. You've always had a thing for projects, haven't you? Lena's expression didn't change. I have a thing for people who don't lie. Matthew's smile thinned. Careful who you let in, darling. They tend to take more than they give. Xander stepped forward, voice calm. You always talk like that, or are you just trying to impress yourself? Matthew blinked, caught off guard. Lena's eyes flicked to Xander, something fierce and proud in them. Matthew turned away with a practiced shrug. Enjoy your evening. They did. They danced once, slow and quiet. Lena didn't say anything when Xander stepped on her foot the first time, just laughed under her breath and adjusted her stance. As the night wound down, they stepped onto the museum balcony. The city stretched out below them, glittering and alive. Xander leaned against the railing. That guy back there, he's from your world. Yes. You date him. No, he wanted to merge companies. Thought sleeping with the CEO was a fast track. It didn't work. She looked over at him. I don't mix business with disappointment. He laughed, the sound low. You're a lot braver than me. No, she said, her voice soft. I've just had more practice pretending I'm not scared. He looked at her then, really looked. You're not alone anymore, Lena. She inhaled, eyes shining in the cold light. Neither are you. And for the first time in years, Xander didn't feel like he was holding his world together with duct tape and grit. For the first time, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to do it alone. The first snow of January came heavy, turning Brooklyn into a muffled, white world. Xander stood in the yard behind his walk-up, shoveling a path to the alley in boots soaked through and breath curling in the air. Evie sat at the top of the steps, bundled in 3 layers, eating a clementine and drawing shapes in the frost with her boot. He'd barely spoken to Lena since the gala. Not because he didn't want to, but because something had shifted that night, something real and terrifying. He couldn't shake the way she'd looked at him under the city lights, like he was something she'd found instead of chosen. And that scared him more than anything. He'd spent his whole life being what people needed. A father, a fixer, a man who didn't ask for more than he could carry, but Lena, she offered more without asking what it would cost. He'd never learned what to do with that. Evie's voice broke through the silence. Are we going to see her again? He paused mid-shovel. Who? She gave him a look. Lena. He cleared his throat. I don't know. Evie peeled another slice of fruit. I think she misses us. Xander leaned on the handle. What makes you say that? She gave me a book at the restaurant. You think people who don't miss you give you books? He didn't answer, just stared at the snow piling on the fence. That night, he found himself standing in the kitchen, staring at the number on the back of the card Lena had given him the night they met. He hadn't needed to use it. She had always been the one reaching out. But this time, he picked up the phone. When she answered, her voice caught him off guard. It wasn't polished, not the version she used at boardrooms or galas. It was soft, distracted, like she'd been staring at the ceiling before he called. Hey, he said. There was a pause. Xander. I got your voicemail. I didn't leave one. You didn't have to. He heard her shift, maybe sitting up. I wasn't sure if you'd want to talk. I wasn't sure either. Another pause, then, do you want to come over? I can't tonight, I've got Evie. She can come. She's asleep. Silence again, then tomorrow. He exhaled, yeah, tomorrow. She was waiting when he arrived the next day. No driver, no formality, Just her, standing on the steps with her coat unzipped and snowflakes caught in her lashes. Evie ran ahead, hugging her without hesitation. Lena wrapped her arms around the girl tightly. "You're freezing." "I made you something," Evie said, pulling a folded paper from her coat. "It's a story. I drew you in it." Lena crouched down, accepting it like it was a priceless artifact. "Can I keep it?" "It's for your library," Evie said, "so you don't forget us." Lena's eyes flicked up to Xander, unreadable. "Couldn't forget you if I tried." Inside, she made hot chocolate while Evie recited the plot of her story, something involving a castle, a dragon, and a girl who built a ladder out of hammers. Xander stood at the counter, watching Lena laugh in a way he hadn't seen before. Not polite, not composed, just open. When Evie nodded off on the couch after her second mug, Lena turned to him. "I thought you weren't going to call." "I almost didn't." "Why did you?" He looked at her, hands braced on the edge of the marble. "Because couldn't stop thinking about what it felt like to be in that room with you. And because I started to wonder what it would be like to be with someone who saw me before they saw what I do." She stepped closer. "I see you, Xander." He ran a hand over his jaw. "I don't belong in your world." "Then we'll build a new one." His eyes searched hers. "It's not that easy." "No," she said, "but it's worth it." He hesitated, then asked, "What happens when your people start asking questions? About me, about Evie?" "They already have." He stiffened, and I told them the truth. That I met someone who reminded me what it feels like to be human. He swallowed hard. "You're serious about this?" She nodded once. "Are you?" Xander glanced at the girl sleeping on the couch, her head resting against a cushion twice her size. He thought of the years he'd spent building a life from scraps, holding everything together with grit and instinct. Then he looked back at Lena. "I could be." She reached for his hand. "Then let's find out." Over the next few weeks, their lives began to blur at the edges. Lena came to Evie's school play, sitting in the third row in a dress far too elegant for the folding chairs around her. Xander helped Lena fix a burst pipe in one of her rental properties, refusing to let her call a crew. She brought breakfast to his job site one morning, surprising him with a thermos of coffee and a bacon sandwich wrapped in wax paper. It wasn't perfect. Some nights, Xander lay awake wondering what would happen if the balance shifted, if Lena got tired of his world, if the novelty wore off. He knew what it was to be left behind. He couldn't afford to let that happen again, not to him, and not to Evie. But Lena never flinched. She invited him into her life without conditions, without expectations. And slowly, he began to believe maybe this wasn't temporary. Maybe this was something they were building together. One evening, as he walked into Lena's townhouse with Evie skipping ahead of him, he noticed a small change. The window he'd fixed the night they met had been replaced finally with gleaming new glass. But the tape he'd used was still folded and framed on the wall beside it, like a piece of art. "You kept it?" he asked, pointing. Lena smiled. "It reminded me where this started." He reached for her hand, folding it into his. "You always frame your emergencies." "Only the ones that change my life." He didn't know what to say to that. So he kissed her, slow and certain, in the middle of her foyer while Evie pretended not to see. Spring arrived in bursts of color. Trees bloomed and the city came alive again. One Saturday morning, Lena asked them to meet her at the townhouse. When they arrived, the front door was open, a breeze drifting through. Evie darted inside first. "Why does it smell like cookies?" Lena was in the kitchen, flour on her cheek, trays of cookies cooling on the counter. She looked up when they entered, eyes bright. "I have something to show you." She led them upstairs, not to the library, but to a room at the end of the hall. When she opened the door, Xander froze. It was a bedroom. Small but beautiful. A twin bed with soft blankets, a shelf filled with Evie's favorite books, a desk in the corner with colored pencils already organized in cups. A framed drawing hung on the wall, the same one Evie had given her, now matted in silver. "This is for when you stay," Lena said. "Both of you, if you want to." Evie gasped, "This is mine." Lena nodded, "Only if you say yes." Evie ran inside, already pulling her shoes off. Xander stood in the hallway, stunned. "You did all this." "I want you to feel like you belong here." He stepped toward her. "You didn't have to." "I know," she said, "but I love you." He went still. She reached up, brushing a bit of flour from her cheek. "I love the way you protect your daughter, the way you never stop pushing forward, even when it's hard. I love that you make people feel safe. I love you, Xander." He didn't move, just looked at her like she'd said something impossible. Then he cupped her face in both hands and kissed her like he'd been waiting his whole life to do it right. "I love you too," he said quietly, "and I think I've been falling since the night you opened your door barefoot." She laughed into his chest, and he held her there, surrounded by the smell of cookies and the sound of Evie giggling in the next room. They didn't need anything extravagant. No headlines, no announcements, just each other. That summer, they got married in the garden behind the townhouse. Evie was their flower girl, tossing petals with more enthusiasm than accuracy. Lena wore a dress with no train, no veil, just a smile that made Xander forget what air felt like. The ceremony was small, quiet, just a few people who mattered. After the vows, Lena leaned in and whispered, "You still think you don't belong in my world?" He pulled her close. "No, I think we made our own." And they did. Together. The first time they fought, it wasn't about anything dramatic. It wasn't about money, or the past, or the fact that Lena had a board of directors who still didn't understand why the CEO of Zaragoza Tech had married a man who once fixed toilets for a living. It was about the dishwasher. More specifically, about the fact that Xander had taken it apart on a Tuesday evening while Lena was trying to prepare dinner, and Evie was upstairs writing a book report on Harriet Tubman. "I told you I'd call someone," Lena said, holding a spoon mid-air while steam rose from the saucepan on the stove. "And I told you I could fix it," Xander replied from the floor, shoulders wedged under the open unit, wires exposed, and tools scattered like shrapnel across the tile. "It's a simple clog in the intake valve." Simple means done in 20 minutes. You've been under there for 45. He slid out and sat up, wiping his hands with a rag. "You're measuring me like a tech contract." "I'm measuring you like a man who promised me we'd eat before 9. He stood, his voice still even. "I don't like calling people to do something I can do myself." Lena turned the heat down. "I know that, but sometimes it's okay to let someone else handle things." He leaned against the counter, jaw tight. "That's not how I work." She set the spoon down. "I'm not asking you to change, just to meet me where I am." He didn't respond right away. He just looked at her, the kitchen suddenly too quiet, filled with the hum of effort and unspoken things. Then Evie called down the stairs, asking if she could use Lena's laptop to look up a quote. The tension dissolved like cold butter in a hot pan. Lena nodded, and Xander reached for his tools again, but this time he paused. "I'll finish it tomorrow," he said. "Let's eat." They didn't talk about the dishwasher again. But that night, after Evie had gone to bed and the plates were stacked neatly in the sink, Lena sat beside him on the couch with her legs tucked under her and whispered, "It's okay to need help." Xander didn't answer. He just reached for her hand and held it like it anchored him. In the months that followed, they learned how to live together in the quiet ways that mattered. Lena stopped scheduling meetings on Friday afternoons and started picking Evie up from school when Xander worked late. She learned how to braid hair, poorly at first, until Evie told her the third attempt was almost perfect. Xander started leaving handwritten notes in Lena's briefcase, sometimes just a quote Evie liked, sometimes a reminder to eat lunch. He repaired the creaky drawer in her office desk without being asked. And when she launched a new mentorship program for young women in tech, he showed up at the press conference in a navy jacket and held her hand off camera the entire time. They built something real. Not glamorous, not perfect, but honest. On Evie's 8th birthday, Lena gave her a telescope. Not a toy one, but a real, adjustable refractor scope with a digital interface and a sturdy tripod. Evie cried when she unwrapped it. "I can see the moon like a scientist," she whispered. "You are a scientist," Lena replied. "You just haven't picked your field yet." Xander watched them from the doorway, arms crossed over his chest, heart full. After the party, once the guests were gone and the backyard was quiet again, he found Lena on the porch, curled up in a blanket with a glass of wine. "She's in bed," he said, joining her. "Said this was the best birthday she's ever had." Lena looked up. "She's easy to love." "So are you." She leaned into his shoulder. "Sometimes I worry I'm not doing it right." "You are." "I didn't grow up with this. Family dinners, birthday parties with pink balloons. I never thought I'd be part of something like this." "You built it, every piece of it." She tilted her head. "We built it." He kissed the top of her head. "You ever think about expanding it?" She looked up, surprised. "You mean?" "I mean, we've got the space. The love. The patience is a work in progress, but I think we're getting there." She turned fully to face him, eyes shining. "Are you saying you want to have another?" "I'm saying if you want to, I'd be the happiest man alive." Tears gathered along her lashes. "Yes." They didn't rush anything. Lena adjusted her schedule. Xander took on fewer freelance projects. Evie started referring to herself as big sister in training and read every book on babies she could find. When the test turned positive, Lena cried in the kitchen with Xander's arms around her, whispering that this time she wouldn't be alone. She wasn't. She let Xander paint the nursery, even though he insisted on doing it without tape and got specks of yellow paint in his hair. She let Evie pick the stuffed animals. She even let her assistant handle her email for the first time in years. At the appointment where they heard the heartbeat, Xander squeezed her hand so tightly she almost told him to ease up. But she didn't, because he was shaking. "It's real," he said afterward, his voice rough. She nodded. "It's ours." When the baby came, a girl with Lena's eyes and Xander's mouth, it was Evie who held her first, cradling the tiny bundle like she was holding Starlight. "She looks like she already knows things," she whispered. "She does," Lena said. "She knows she's loved." They named her Isla. The townhouse grew louder, fuller, but never chaotic. Lena had a way of making space even in the busiest moments, and Xander had a way of grounding everything when it threatened to feel too big. One evening, as they sat on the back porch with Isla asleep in Lena's arms and Evie reading nearby, Xander turned to her. "I've been thinking." "That's usually dangerous," she teased. He laughed softly. "I want to build you something." Lena raised a brow. "Like what?" "A house, not because this one isn't perfect, but because I want to give you something with my hands, something permanent." She blinked. "You want to build a house?" "Piece by piece, every nail, every wall, with a library that wraps around a fireplace and a garden big enough for both girls to chase each other through." She swallowed hard. "You do that." "For you, I'd build it twice." It took a year. He worked weekends and evenings, sometimes with Evie handing him tools and Isla watching from her bouncer. Lena never asked how much it cost. She just showed up with lemonade, kissed his neck when he was too sunburned to notice, and told him she'd never seen anything more beautiful. The house stood on the edge of a quiet hill outside the city. Wide porch, tall windows, warm wood beams, and a kitchen big enough for chaos. And in the center, a library with 2 ladders and every book Lena had ever loved. They moved in on a Saturday in June. No fanfare. Just boxes, laughter, and a picnic on the floor because the dining table wouldn't arrive for another week. That night, after the girls were asleep and the stars came out over the hill, Lena curled against him on their new bed. "You remember when we met?" she asked. "You mean when your window tried to kill you?" She laughed. "I thought you were just a guy with a toolbox and a tired smile." "I was. You're so much more." He brushed her hair back. "So are you." They didn't need fireworks or fortune to remind them what they had. Just a girl who believed in stars. A man who believed in work. And a love that rebuilt everything they thought they'd lost. Together they were home, always,